The blood-stained letter trembled in Hannah Harper's hands as she stood on the dusty main street of Owyhee, Nevada in the scorching summer of 1879. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of running, and somehow her past had found her again in this remote mining town, nestled against the Owyhee Mountains. "Miss Harper," Sheriff Wilson called from across the street, "got more mail for you." Hannah quickly folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket, composing herself before turning toward the approaching lawman. At 24, she had mastered the art of appearing calm when her insides were churning with fear. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said, accepting the small package wrapped in brown paper. Her fingers left damp marks on the wrapping. "Everything all right?" The sheriff studied her face. "You're looking pale as milk." "Just the heat," Hannah lied. "I should get back to the schoolhouse." The sheriff nodded, but his eyes lingered on her retreating figure. Hannah felt his gaze like a physical weight between her shoulder blades. How long would it be before everyone in Owyhee looked at her that way with suspicion, with judgment? The letter in her pocket might as well have been a branding iron, searing her with shame that would soon be visible to all. In the 18 months since she'd arrived in Owyhee claiming to be a widow from back east, Hannah had carefully constructed a life for herself. The town had been desperate for a schoolteacher, and her education had been sufficient to secure the position. The townsfolk respected her quiet dignity, her devotion to the children, her modest ways. None of them knew what she had done. None of them knew what she was running from, until now. At the edge of town, Hannah passed the livery stable where a group of cowboys had just ridden in, their horses kicking up clouds of Nevada dust. She kept her eyes down, but not before noticing a tall stranger dismounting from a magnificent chestnut stallion. Unlike the other men who were trail-worn and dusty, this cowboy moved with a fluid grace that caught her attention despite her troubled mind. "Beau," one of the other men called, "you still planning to stay on at the Callahan place?" The tall man nodded, adjusting his black Stetson. "That's the plan, Jack. For now, anyway." Hannah hurried past, clutching her package tighter. She had no business noticing strangers, not when her carefully constructed world was about to crumble around her. The schoolhouse sat alone at the end of the street, a simple wooden building with a small bell tower. School was out for summer, but Hannah still came each day to prepare lessons, mend books, and clean. The solitude suited her, especially now. Inside, she closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to shake. She pulled the letter from her pocket and read it again, though the words were already seared into her memory. "I know what you did in Boston. I know about the baby. Pay me $500 by month's end, or everyone in Owyhee will know too. I'll be watching." There was no signature, but Hannah didn't need one. Only one person knew her secret: Arnold Tate, the man who had promised to marry her before abandoning her when she told him she was with child. The man whose threats had driven her from her family's home in Boston. Shamed and desperate, the package in her hands suddenly felt as heavy as her heart. She unwrapped it to find a small porcelain doll, the kind wealthy parents bought for their daughters, the kind she had once hoped to give her own child. Attached was a note in the same handwriting. Like mother, like daughter. Hannah sank to her knees, clutching the doll to her chest. Her daughter hadn't lived long enough to play with dolls. Born early and frail, the tiny girl had taken only a few breaths before slipping away, leaving Hannah alone with her grief and shame. No one in Owyhee knew she had been a mother. No one knew she had buried her infant in a pauper's grave before fleeing Boston. $500 might as well have been 5,000. Her teacher's salary barely covered her modest needs. And even if she could pay, what guarantee did she have that Arnold wouldn't demand more? That he wouldn't reveal her secret anyway? Hannah stood shakily, placing the doll on her desk. There was only one solution. She would have to run again. The following day, Hannah went to the bank to withdraw her meager savings. As she waited for the teller to process her request, the door opened, bringing with it a gust of warm air and the tall cowboy she had seen at the livery. Up close, he was even more striking. Broad-shouldered and lean-hipped, with features that seemed carved from weathered stone. His eyes were a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin. When those eyes met hers, Hannah quickly looked away. "Miss Harper," the bank manager greeted her. "Have you met Mr. Beau Lancaster? He's come to work as foreman at the Callahan Ranch." Hannah nodded politely. "Welcome to Owyhee, Mr. Lancaster." "Madam." His voice was deep, with a hint of Texas in its cadence. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. "I understand you're the schoolteacher here." "Yes." Hannah accepted the envelope of money from the teller, suddenly eager to leave. The way Beau Lancaster looked at her as if he could see past her carefully constructed facade made her uncomfortable. "My boss has a daughter who will be needing schooling come fall," he said. "Jane's 8 and smart as a whip, but hasn't had much formal education." "School begins the first Monday in September," Hannah replied automatically, though she knew she would be long gone by then. The thought sent a pang of regret through her. She loved teaching Jane Callahan and all the other children of Owyhee. "Mind if I walk with you?" Beau asked as she turned to leave. "I'm headed back to the mercantile, and I reckon that's on your way." Before Hannah could refuse, the bank manager chimed in. "That's neighborly of you, Lancaster. Miss Harper shouldn't walk alone with that drifter Tate hanging about town lately." Hannah's blood froze. "Tate," she echoed faintly. "Unsavory character," the manager continued, oblivious to her reaction. "Claims to be looking for work, but looks more like trouble to me." I hadn't heard," Hannah managed. "Allow me, then," Beau said, holding the door open. His tone made it clear he wouldn't take no for an answer. Outside, Hannah fought to maintain her composure. Arnold was here in Owyhee, not just sending threats but physically present. Her knees threatened to buckle beneath her. "You all right, Miss Harper?" Beau's voice penetrated her fog of panic. "You've gone white as a sheet." "I'm fine," she lied. "Just the heat." "It's a dry heat, at least," he said, studying her face with those penetrating blue eyes. "Back in Texas, the air gets so thick with humidity you can practically drink it." Hannah nodded absently, her mind racing. She needed to leave immediately, tonight if possible. But where would she go? How far would she need to run to escape Arnold's reach? "You don't much like conversation, do you, Miss Harper?" There was a hint of amusement in Beau's voice. "I'm sorry," she said, gathering her wits. "I have a lot on my mind." "Fair enough." He fell silent for a few steps, then said, "This Tate fellow, you know him." Hannah nearly stumbled. "Why would you think that?" "The way you reacted when his name was mentioned." Beau shrugged. "Seemed personal." "I don't know him," Hannah said firmly, clutching her reticule tighter. "I simply don't care for strangers in town. Yet here you are, walking with me." His mouth quirked up at one corner. Despite everything, Hannah felt a flicker of irritation. "As you pointed out, Mr. Lancaster, you're walking with me, not the other way around." Beau's laugh was unexpected, a rich, warm sound that momentarily cut through her anxiety. "Fair point, Miss Harper. I'll stop pestering you with questions." They continued in silence until they reached the mercantile. Hannah started to bid him goodbye, but Beau spoke first. "If you ever need help with anything," he said, his expression suddenly serious, "I'm staying at the Callahan place about 3 miles west of town. Just follow the creek." Hannah met his gaze, startled by the sincerity in it. "Thank you, but I'm quite self-sufficient, Mr. Lancaster." "I don't doubt it." He settled his hat back on his head. But everybody needs help sometimes, Miss Harper, even the self-sufficient ones. As he tipped his hat and walked away, Hannah felt an unexpected twinge of regret. Under different circumstances, she might have found Beau Lancaster's direct manner refreshing. But circumstances weren't different. By this time tomorrow, she would be gone from Owyhee, and Beau Lancaster would be just another person she'd left behind. Back at her small cabin behind the schoolhouse, Hannah began packing her few belongings. 2 dresses, some undergarments, a hairbrush, and the few books she couldn't bear to part with. Everything she owned fit into a single carpet bag, the same one she'd carried from Boston. As dusk fell, Hannah prepared to leave under cover of darkness. She'd purchased a ticket on the eastbound stage that would depart at first light. All she needed to do was slip away to the way station 3 miles east of town and wait. A knock at her door startled her so badly she dropped the book she was holding. Heart hammering, Hannah froze. Had Arnold found her, Miss Harper? A woman's voice, not a man's. "It's Eliza Callahan. I need to speak with you." Hannah exhaled shakily and opened the door to find Jane Callahan's mother standing on her porch, looking worried. "Mrs. Callahan," Hannah said, trying to appear normal despite the packed bag visible on her bed. "Is everything all right?" "No," Eliza said bluntly. "Jane's taken ill with a fever. Doc Jenkins is there, but she keeps asking for you. Would you come? I've brought the wagon." Hannah hesitated, glancing back at her bag. The stage wouldn't leave until morning. Surely she could spare a few hours for a sick child who needed her. "Of course," she said, reaching for her shawl. "Let me get my things." The Callahan ranch was larger than most in the area, with a sprawling main house and several outbuildings. As they approached, Hannah saw lights burning in nearly every window. "Frank's got the men searching the north pasture for strays," Eliza explained as she helped Hannah down from the wagon. "It's just me, Jane, and the new foreman here tonight." Inside, they found Doc Jenkins emerging from Jane's room, wiping his hands on a towel. "Fever's holding steady," he reported. "I've given her some willow bark tea, but what she needs most is rest and cool compresses." "I'll sit with her," Hannah offered. "Good." The doctor nodded. "If the fever spikes, send for me immediately." Jane lay in her bed, her normally rosy cheeks flushed with fever. When Hannah entered, the child's eyes lit up despite her illness. "Miss Harper," she said weakly, "will you tell me a story? The one about the princess who saves herself?" Hannah smiled, settling into the chair beside the bed. "Of course, sweetheart." For the next few hours, Hannah told stories, sang quiet songs, and kept cool cloths on Jane's forehead. The child's fever rose and fell, but by midnight she had fallen into a more peaceful sleep. Hannah stepped out onto the porch for some fresh air, her mind heavy with conflicting emotions. She'd miss Jane and all her students. She'd miss the life she'd built here. "She doing any better?" Hannah started at the voice. Beau Lancaster stood a few feet away, leaning against a porch pillar. In the moonlight, his features were cast in silver and shadow. "The fever's down," Hannah said. "She's sleeping now. Good." He moved closer, offering her a cup. "Coffee, it's fresh." Hannah accepted it gratefully. The warm mug felt good in her hands despite the summer night. "Thank you." "Eliza said you came right away when she asked. That was kind. Jane is a special child. She thinks the world of you." Beau studied her over the rim of his own cup. "Says you're the smartest person she's ever met." Hannah smiled despite herself. "Jane has a gift for exaggeration." "I don't know about that." His eyes held hers. "You don't seem like the typical schoolmarm to me." "And what would you know about typical schoolmarms, Mr. Lancaster?" His laugh was soft in the night air. "I've met a few. Most didn't quote Shakespeare to 8-year-olds." Hannah looked at him in surprise. "Jane told you that." She recited half of Portia's mercy speech at dinner last week. Said Miss Harper taught it to her because mercy is something everyone should understand. Hannah felt a flush creep up her neck, though whether from embarrassment or something else, she wasn't sure. Jane has an exceptional memory, and an exceptional teacher, it seems. Before Hannah could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats cut through the night. A rider was coming fast up the road to the ranch. Beau straightened, his posture suddenly alert. "Stay here," he said, moving to the edge of the porch. The rider reined in his horse in a cloud of dust. In the moonlight, Hannah could make out the glint of a badge on his chest, Sheriff Wilson. "Lancaster," the sheriff called, dismounting. "Is Miss Harper here?" "I'm here," Hannah said, stepping forward. A cold dread settled in her stomach. "There's been trouble in town," the sheriff said, removing his hat. "Man named Arnold Tate's been shot. Before he died, he was asking for you." Hannah's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering on the porch floor. "Dead," she whispered. "Yes, madam. Doc Jenkins says he was likely killed during a card game gone bad at the Silver Dollar. Had your name and the schoolhouse address in his pocket." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Mind telling me what business a respectable lady like yourself had with the likes of Arnold Tate?" Hannah opened her mouth, but no words came. Her secret teetered on the edge of exposure, her shame about to be broadcast to the entire town. She felt the weight of Beau's gaze, heavy as a physical touch. "Sheriff," Beau's voice cut through the silence. "Miss Harper's been here since sundown, tending to little Jane Callahan. Mrs. Callahan can verify that." "That's not what I asked," the sheriff said, his eyes still on Hannah. "I want to know what connection she had to Tate." "I knew him in Boston," Hannah said softly, her voice surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. "A long time ago." "Boston," the sheriff frowned. "You told folks you were from Philadelphia." Hannah closed her eyes briefly. One lie exposed, with more sure to follow. I wasn't entirely truthful about my past." The sheriff's expression hardened. "Miss Harper, I think you'd better come back to town with me. I've got some questions that need answering." "Now hold on." Beau stepped between them. "It's the middle of the night and Miss Harper's been caring for a sick child. Surely your questions can wait until morning." "This is a murder investigation, Lancaster. Step aside." "At least let her gather her things and say goodbye to the child," Beau insisted. "Give her that much dignity." The sheriff hesitated, then nodded curtly. 5 minutes. Inside, Hannah moved as if in a dream. She said goodbye to a sleeping Jane, gathered her shawl, and whispered a quick explanation to a confused Eliza Callahan. Through it all, she felt numb. Arnold was dead. Her tormentor was gone, but her secret was about to be exposed anyway. Everything she'd built in Owyhee was about to crumble. When she stepped back onto the porch, Beau was waiting. The sheriff had moved to water his horse at the trough. "Miss Harper," Beau said quietly. "Whatever trouble you're in, I meant what I said about helping." Hannah looked up at him, surprised by the earnestness in his eyes. For a wild moment, she considered telling him everything about Arnold's seduction, her pregnancy, the child who lived only minutes, the shame that had driven her from her home. But what would be the point? By tomorrow, everyone in Owyhee would know. "Thank you, Mr. Lancaster," she said instead. "But I'm afraid no one can help me now." The ride back to town was silent and tense. The sheriff escorted Hannah directly to his office, where he questioned her for hours about her relationship with Arnold Tate. Exhausted and seeing no alternative, Hannah finally told him a version of the truth. That Arnold had been a suitor who betrayed her, that she had fled Boston to escape him, and that he had recently found her and attempted to extort money. "So you had reason to want him dead," the sheriff concluded. "No," Hannah exclaimed. "I wanted him to leave me alone, but I would never wish death on anyone." "Yet you admit you were planning to leave town tonight," he said, gesturing to the carpetbag Eliza had thoughtfully brought from the schoolhouse. "Seems mighty convenient that Tate turns up dead just as you're about to run." "I was running from him, not because I'd done anything to him," Hannah protested. The questioning continued until dawn, when Doc Jenkins arrived to report on his examination of Arnold's body. "Shot twice at close range," the doctor said. "Death was likely instantaneous. From the powder burns and angle, I'd say the killer was sitting across the card table from him." "Any witnesses?" the sheriff asked. "The usual crowd at the Silver Dollar," Jenkins replied. "Most claim they were looking elsewhere when the shots were fired. But Mabel from the kitchen says she saw a man with a gold tooth arguing with Tate earlier." The sheriff's brow furrowed. "That'd be Dutch Harmon. He left town on the midnight stage." "Then I suggest you telegraph ahead to have him detained," Jenkins said mildly. The sheriff turned back to Hannah, looking somewhat embarrassed. "Seems I may owe you an apology, Miss Harper, but I still need to understand what Tate wanted from you and why you lied about your past." Hannah closed her eyes, too tired to maintain her defenses any longer. "He knew something about me, something I've been trying to leave behind. He threatened to tell everyone if I didn't pay him." "And what was that something?" Hannah took a deep breath. "In Boston, I had a child out of wedlock, a daughter who died shortly after birth." The words felt strange on her tongue after years of keeping them locked inside. "Arnold was the father. He abandoned me when I told him I was with child. I left Boston because of the shame." The sheriff's expression softened slightly. "I see." "No, you don't," Hannah said quietly. "You can't possibly understand what it's like to carry that kind of shame, to be marked by it, to have it follow you wherever you go." Jenkins cleared his throat. "Sheriff, I believe Miss Harper has been through enough for one night. Unless you're charging her with something, she should be allowed to go home and rest." The sheriff hesitated, then nodded. "You're free to go, Miss Harper, but don't leave town. This investigation isn't closed yet." Hannah stepped out into the early morning sunlight feeling strangely hollow. Arnold was dead. The immediate threat was gone, but her secret was out, at least to the sheriff and Doc Jenkins. How long before it spread through town like wildfire? How long before the whispers started, before parents began to question whether a woman of her moral character should be teaching their children? Miss Harper. Beau Lancaster stood across the street, his tall figure unmistakable even in the growing crowd of early risers. He crossed to her, concern etched on his features. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I've been waiting for hours. You've been here all night." Hannah was too tired to hide her surprise. "Couldn't very well leave you alone with the sheriff," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to stand vigil for a woman he barely knew. "Come on, I'll walk you home." Too exhausted to argue, Hannah allowed him to take her carpetbag and escort her through town. People stared as they passed, whispering behind their hands. News of Arnold's murder and Hannah's connection to the dead man had clearly spread. At her cabin, Beau set her bag down on the porch. "You should rest," he said. "I'll bring you something to eat later." Hannah shook her head. "That's not necessary, Mr. Lancaster. You've been kind, but—" "Beau," he interrupted. "My name is Beau." "Beau," she conceded, "but you don't need to concern yourself with me." His blue eyes held her steadily. "Maybe I want to." "You don't know me," Hannah said, suddenly angry at his persistence, at the gentleness in his voice. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you dropped everything to help a sick child," he said evenly. "I know you're well-read and kind. And I know you're running from something that scares you enough to make you leave a place and people you clearly care about." Hannah turned away, unable to bear the weight of his gaze. "What you don't know would fill volumes." "Then tell me," he said simply. For a moment, Hannah was tempted. But the events of the night caught up with her, and exhaustion overwhelmed her desire to unburden herself. "I can't," she whispered. "Not now." Beau nodded as if he understood. "Get some rest. I'll come back later." As he walked away, Hannah wondered if he would actually return once he heard the whispers that were undoubtedly already circulating through town. Who would want to associate with a woman who had borne a child out of wedlock, a woman branded by shame? Inside her cabin, Hannah collapsed onto her bed fully clothed, too tired even to remove her shoes. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Arnold's face, heard his mocking voice reading the letter he'd sent. "I know about the baby, her baby." Her daughter, who had lived only long enough to draw a few breaths, whose tiny face Hannah had memorized in those brief moments before she was taken away. In Boston, she hadn't even been allowed to name the child or attend her burial. Unwed mothers were not afforded such dignities. A knock at her door startled Hannah from her dark thoughts. She sat up, wondering how long she'd been lying there. The light coming through the window suggested it was mid-afternoon. "Miss Harper," a woman's voice called. "It's Eliza Callahan." Hannah smoothed her rumpled dress and opened the door to find not only Eliza but several other women from town standing on her porch. Each held a covered dish or basket. "We thought you might need some company," Eliza said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The other women, Martha Jenkins, the doctor's wife, Susan Wilson, the sheriff's wife, and Rebecca Powell, who ran the millinery shop, followed. Hannah stood bewildered as they bustled about her small cabin, setting out food, brewing tea, and generally making themselves at home. I don't understand," she finally managed. Martha Jenkins patted her hand. "We heard about what happened with that Tate fellow. Must have been quite a shock." "You heard?" Hannah repeated faintly. "That he tried to extort money from you," Susan Wilson clarified, pouring tea. "Shameful behavior." "My husband told me how that man abandoned you when you needed him most," Martha added, her kind eyes full of sympathy. "Some men aren't worth the ground they walk on." Hannah sat down heavily. "Then you know, about Boston, about my child." The women exchanged glances. "We know you suffered a terrible loss," Eliza said gently, "and that you came here to start fresh. And you don't think I'm—" Hannah couldn't bring herself to say the words. "A woman who faced adversity with courage," Rebecca Powell supplied. "A woman who rebuilt her life despite heartbreak. Why would we think ill of you for that?" Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. "Because it's shameful. Because proper women don't. Proper women don't get abandoned by men who promise to marry them," Susan interrupted, her tone sharp. "Proper women don't grieve for children taken too soon. I lost 2 babies before they drew breath, Miss Harper. Does that make me shameful too?" "No, of course not," Hannah whispered. "The only shame in this situation belongs to Arnold Tate," Martha declared firmly. "Not to you." Hannah looked from face to face, searching for judgment or condemnation, but finding only compassion and understanding. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll eat something," Eliza suggested, placing a plate of food before her. "And say you'll reconsider leaving Owyhee. Jane would be heartbroken to lose her teacher." "How did you know I was planning to leave?" Hannah asked. "Beau mentioned your packed bag," Eliza admitted. "He's quite concerned about you, you know." Hannah felt a flush creep up her neck. "Mr. Lancaster hardly knows me." "He knows enough," Eliza said with a small smile. "And he'd like to know more if you'd allow it." As the women stayed to share the meal they'd brought, Hannah felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the tight bands of shame that had constricted her heart for so long. These women knew her secret, yet they were here, offering friendship and support instead of condemnation. After they left, promising to return the next day, Hannah sat alone, contemplating this unexpected turn of events. For years, she had lived in fear of her past being discovered, certain it would mean rejection and ostracism. Yet here, in this small Nevada mining town, she had found something she never expected: acceptance. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, Beau Lancaster stood on her porch, hat in hand. "I saw the ladies leaving," he said. "Thought I'd check on you, make sure you're all right." Hannah studied him in the golden light of late afternoon. His face was open, his blue eyes direct. There was no hint of the judgment she had feared for so long. "Would you like to come in?" she asked, stepping aside. Beau entered, glancing around the small cabin with its neat furnishings and shelves of books. "Cozy," he commented. "It's small, but it suits me," Hannah said, suddenly self-conscious. "Can I offer you some tea? The ladies brought enough food to feed an army." "I wouldn't say no," Beau replied with a smile that seemed to warm the room. As Hannah busied herself with the kettle, Beau settled into a chair at her small table. "Sheriff Wilson telegraphed that they caught Dutch Harmon in Elko," he said. "He confessed to shooting Tate over a gambling debt." Hannah's hand stilled. "So it's over. The murder investigation, yes." Beau's eyes found hers. "But something tells me there's more troubling you." Hannah set the cups on the table and sat across from him. "Did Mrs. Callahan tell you why Arnold Tate was blackmailing me?" "No," Beau said. "And I didn't ask. I figured if you wanted me to know, you'd tell me yourself." The simple respect in his words touched Hannah deeply. How long had it been since someone had trusted her to make her own decisions about her life? "I had a child out of wedlock," she said, the words coming easier now after having spoken them aloud earlier. "A daughter who lived only minutes. Arnold was the father. He abandoned me when I told him I was expecting, then reappeared years later to threaten me with exposure if I didn't pay him." Beau's expression remained steady, though his eyes darkened with anger. "He sounds like a real snake." "He was," Hannah agreed. "But his death doesn't change the fact that my past, my shame, is now known." "What shame?" Beau asked, his voice gentle but firm. "I see a woman who endured hardship and kept going. I see strength, not shame." Hannah looked at him in wonder. "How can you say that? You barely know me." "I know enough," he said, echoing Eliza's words. "And I'd like to know more if you'd let me." "Why?" The question escaped before Hannah could stop it. Beau reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "Because from the moment I saw you on that dusty street, looking so proper but with a spark in your eyes that said there was fire beneath all that propriety, I wanted to know your story." Hannah felt her heart quicken at his words, at the warmth in his eyes. "My story isn't a happy one." "All stories have dark chapters," Beau said. "Mine included, but that doesn't mean they can't have happy endings." Hannah found herself smiling despite everything. "Are you always this philosophical, Mr. Lancaster?" "Only when I'm trying to convince a beautiful schoolteacher not to run away before I have a chance to court her properly," he replied with a grin that transformed his face. "Court me," Hannah echoed, her smile fading. "You can't be serious." "I'm entirely serious," Beau said, his expression sobering. "Unless you find the idea objectionable." Hannah stood, moving to the window to gather her thoughts. "You don't understand what you're saying. I'm a woman with a past, a woman people will talk about." "Let them talk," Beau said, rising to stand behind her. "People always find something to gossip about. Next month it'll be someone else." "It's not that simple," Hannah protested, though she felt her resolve weakening. "It can be," Beau insisted, "if we don't make it complicated." Hannah turned to face him, struck by his nearness. He stood close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, smell the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him. "Why would you want to court a woman like me when you could have anyone?" she asked, voicing the fear that had been lurking beneath her other concerns. Beau's expression softened. Because there is no woman like you, Hannah Harper. There's just you, and you're the one I want to know better." The sound of her name on his lips sent a tremor through her. How long had it been since someone had spoken to her with such tenderness? "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Say you'll give me a chance," Beau suggested. "Say you'll let me take you for a drive on Sunday. We can talk, get to know each other better." Hannah hesitated, torn between caution and the unexpected hope blossoming in her heart. "The town will talk. Let them," Beau said simply. "I'm not courting the town, I'm courting you." Against all her better judgment, Hannah found herself nodding. "All right, Sunday." Beau's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Sunday it is. I'll pick you up after church." After he left, Hannah sat for a long time trying to make sense of the day's events. Arnold was dead, her secret exposed, yet instead of the rejection and condemnation she had feared, she had been met with acceptance and understanding. And now, this unexpected interest from a man who seemed undaunted by her past. For the first time in years, Hannah allowed herself to hope that perhaps her life could be more than an endless flight from shame. Perhaps here, in this unlikely place, she could finally stop running. Sunday arrived bright and clear, the Nevada sky an endless vault of blue. Hannah dressed with more care than usual, selecting her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out the amber flecks in her hazel eyes. She pinned her chestnut hair up loosely, allowing a few curls to escape around her face. When Beau arrived with a smart buggy and a matching pair of grays, Hannah felt a flutter of nerves. He looked different today, freshly shaven, his dark hair slicked back, wearing a clean shirt and string tie rather than his usual work clothes. "Miss Harper," he greeted her, helping her into the buggy with a warm hand at her elbow. "You look lovely." "Thank you," Hannah replied, settling her skirts. "You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Lancaster." His grin was quick and bright. "I have my moments." They drove west out of town, following the creek into the foothills where aspens shimmered silver green in the sunlight. Hannah found conversation surprisingly easy. Beau told her about growing up on a ranch in Texas, about the wanderlust that had driven him north after the war, about his dreams of someday having a place of his own. "What about you?" he asked, as they stopped to rest the horses in a shady grove beside the creek. "Did you always want to be a teacher?" Hannah shook her head. "No, I wanted to be a writer. I used to fill notebooks with stories when I was a girl." "What kind of stories?" "Adventures, mostly," Hannah admitted with a small smile. Daring heroines traveling to exotic places, having all sorts of escapades. My mother thought it was a waste of time. She wanted me to focus on finding a suitable husband. And instead you became a teacher. It was a respectable way for a woman alone to support herself, Hannah said. And I discovered I loved it. There's something wonderful about watching a child's mind open to new ideas. Beau helped her down from the buggy, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "You're good at it. Jane talks about you like you hung the moon." Hannah laughed, the sound echoing off the canyon walls. "Jane is an exceptional child." They walked along the creek, talking easily about books they'd read, places they'd seen, dreams they still harbored. Beau spread a blanket in the dappled shade of an aspen grove and unpacked a picnic basket filled with fried chicken, biscuits, and cherry pie. "Did you make all this yourself?" Hannah asked, impressed. "Lord, no," Beau chuckled. "Mrs. Callahan took pity on me. Said she couldn't let me court you with hardtack and jerky. So she knows about this." Hannah gestured between them. "The whole Callahan household knows," Beau admitted. "They're not exactly subtle with their encouragement." Hannah felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "And they don't mind." "Given my history," Beau's expression grew serious. Hannah, the Callahans judge people by who they are now, not by mistakes or hardships in their past. It's one of the reasons I respect them so much. And you, Hannah asked softly, how do you judge people? The same way? Beau's blue eyes held hers. Your past is part of what made you who you are today, but it doesn't define you. Hannah looked away, suddenly overwhelmed by the acceptance in his gaze. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is, Beau said, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her cheek. Maybe we're the ones who make it complicated. His touch, gentle as it was, sent a shiver through Hannah. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself to be close to anyone, let alone a man. Tell me about your daughter, Beau said quietly. The request startled Hannah. No one had ever asked about her child before, as if the baby's brief existence was better left unacknowledged. She was tiny, Hannah said after a moment, her voice soft with memory, but perfect. She had the smallest fingers you can imagine and a wisp of dark hair. She lived long enough to open her eyes once they were blue like yours. Beau's hand found hers on the blanket, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. What was her name? Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. She didn't have one. They took her away before I could name her. They said it was better that way. That wasn't right, Beau said, his voice rough with emotion. Every child deserves a name. I called her Grace in my heart, Hannah whispered. But I never said it aloud until now. Grace, Beau repeated. It's a beautiful name. A single tear slipped down Hannah's cheek. Thank you for asking about her. No one ever has. She was your daughter, Beau said simply. She deserves to be remembered. In that moment, something shifted between them, a deepening, a recognition. Beau Lancaster saw her, truly saw her, not as a woman defined by shame, but as a mother who had loved and lost, as a woman with depth and complexity. Beau, Hannah said, his name still new on her lips. Why are you doing this? Why go to such trouble for someone you barely know? Beau's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Because I saw something in you that first day, a strength, a dignity despite whatever burden you were carrying. And I wanted to know the woman who could bear such a weight and still have kindness for a sick child, still find joy in teaching Shakespeare to 8-year-olds. His words touched something deep within Hannah, a place she had locked away along with her grief and shame. I'm not as strong as you think. You're stronger, Beau countered. You survived loss and shame and starting over in a strange place. That takes a kind of courage most people never need to find. Hannah looked at him, this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly, who saw value in her when she had struggled to see it in herself. You have a way of making me believe in possibilities I'd given up on. Good, Beau said with a slow smile, because I'm full of possibilities. The weeks that followed were the happiest Hannah had known in years. Beau courted her openly, taking her for drives, bringing her wildflowers, sitting beside her in church on Sundays. The townsfolk, rather than shunning her as she had feared, seemed to accept their relationship with approving nods and knowing smiles. School began again in September, and Hannah threw herself into teaching with renewed enthusiasm. Her students, including Jane Callahan, showed no sign that their parents had shared any misgivings about her past with them. One crisp October afternoon, as Hannah was dismissing her students for the day, Beau appeared at the schoolhouse door, his expression unusually serious. "Can you come with me?" he asked once the children had scattered. "There's something I need to show you." Intrigued, Hannah gathered her shawl and followed him to his waiting buggy. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Beau said, helping her up. "It's a surprise." They drove west of town, following now familiar roads toward the Callahan ranch. But instead of turning at the main gate, Beau continued along a smaller trail that wound up into the foothills. "Beau Lancaster, are you kidnapping me?" Hannah teased, trying to mask her curiosity. "Maybe," he replied with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Do you mind? That depends on where you're taking me." They crested a rise, and Hannah gasped. Below them stretched a small valley, green with late-season grass. A creek meandered through it, and at the center stood a cabin newly built from the look of the fresh-cut lumber, with a stone chimney and a covered porch. "What is this?" Hannah asked as Beau halted the horses. "This," he said, turning to face her, "is Callahan's wedding gift to his new foreman. 20 acres and permission to build a home on it." Hannah's heart began to race. "Wedding gift, if you'll have me," Beau said, suddenly looking uncertain. "I know it's been less than 3 months and maybe that's too soon, but I love you, Hannah Harper. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you see beauty in the world despite everything. I want to build a life with you." Hannah stared at him, momentarily speechless. She had come to care deeply for Beau, had even allowed herself to hope for a future with him, but she hadn't expected a proposal so soon. "Beau, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said, taking her hands in his. "Or say you need time to think about it. But please don't say no because you think you don't deserve happiness. Because you do, Hannah, more than anyone I know." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "It's not that simple. Marriage is. There would be children, Beau. What if I can't?" "Then we'll love the children who need homes," Beau said without hesitation. "There are plenty of orphans in this world who need parents, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, I'm just asking if you'll marry me, if you'll let me love you for the rest of our lives." Hannah looked from Beau to the cabin waiting in the valley below, a home, a future, a chance at happiness she had never thought possible. And suddenly, the decision seemed the simplest she had ever made. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, I'll marry you." Beau's face lit with joy, and he pulled her into an embrace that lifted her feet off the ground. When he set her down, his lips found hers in a kiss that spoke of promise and passion and a future bright with possibility. "When?" he asked when they finally parted, both breathless. "How soon can you be ready?" Hannah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "How soon can that cabin be finished?" 2 weeks, Beau said confidently. 3 at the most. I've got the Callahan hands helping when they can." "Then 3 weeks," Hannah decided. "That will give me time to prepare and to find someone to take over the school until they can hire a new teacher." Beau kissed her again, his joy infectious. 3 weeks. I can hardly wait to make you Mrs. Lancaster." They were married on a clear November day, with the aspens golden against the blue Nevada sky. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, held in the small church on Owyhee's Main Street. Jane Callahan served as flower girl, scattering late-blooming wildflowers before Hannah as she walked down the aisle in a cream-colored silk dress that Rebecca Powell had helped her make. When the minister asked who gave this woman in marriage, Frank Callahan stepped forward. "On behalf of all of us who have come to care for her," he said, placing Hannah's hand in Beau's. The gesture brought tears to Hannah's eyes. She had come to Owyhee alone, a woman running from shame and seeking anonymity. She was leaving the church surrounded by friends who had become family. Her hand held firmly in the grasp of a man who loved her not despite her past, but with full knowledge and acceptance of it. Their new home welcomed them with lamplight and warmth. Beau had worked tirelessly to finish it in time, and the women of the town had contributed furnishings, a quilt here, curtains there, a rocking chair for the porch. That night, as they lay together in their new bed, Hannah marveled at the turn her life had taken. "I never thought I could be this happy again," she whispered against Beau's chest. "I thought my chance at joy was gone." Beau's arms tightened around her. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Hannah Lancaster, and I intend to spend my life making sure you have it." Hannah raised her head to look into his eyes, still amazed by the love she saw there. "When I came to Owyhee, I was running from shame. I never expected to find acceptance, let alone love." "Your shame was never yours to carry," Beau said, stroking her hair. "It belonged to the people who judged you, who made you feel less than the remarkable woman you are." "How did you get so wise?" Hannah asked with a smile. "I had a good teacher," Beau replied, pulling her closer. "A schoolmarm who quotes Shakespeare and sees the best in people even when they can't see it in themselves." As winter settled over the valley, Hannah and Beau established their life together. Hannah continued teaching at the schoolhouse, riding to town each morning and returning home each afternoon to the small ranch they were building together. Beau worked as foreman for the Callahans, but spent every spare moment improving their own property, adding a barn, fencing pastures, planning for the day when they might buy cattle of their own. Their home became a gathering place for friends. The Callahans visited often, as did the Jenkins, the Wilsons, and other families from town. Jane Callahan became a regular fixture, spending weekends with Hannah and Beau, helping in the garden Hannah planted when spring arrived, learning to ride the gentle mare Beau bought specifically for her. In late April, as wildflowers began to carpet the valley, Hannah made a discovery that filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She was expecting a child. "Are you sure?" Beau asked when she told him, his face alight with cautious hope. Hannah nodded. "Dr. Jenkins confirmed it yesterday. The baby should arrive in November around our first anniversary." Beau whooped with joy, lifting her off her feet in a gentle embrace. But when he set her down, he saw the fear in her eyes. "What is it, love? What's wrong?" "I'm afraid," Hannah admitted, tears welling. What if I lose this baby too? I couldn't bear it, Beau." Beau gathered her close, his voice steady in her ear. "We'll take every precaution, you'll have the best care, and whatever happens, we'll face it together. I promise." As her body changed with the growing child, Hannah found herself remembering Grace more often, the tiny daughter she had held so briefly. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, Beau joined her with 2 cups of tea. "I've been thinking," he said, settling beside her. "If this baby is a girl, I'd like to name her Grace." Hannah looked at him in surprise. "You would, if you want to," Beau said, taking her hand. "It seems right somehow, a way of honoring the daughter who came before." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "And if it's a boy?" "Then we'll save Grace for the next one," Beau replied with a confidence that made Hannah laugh despite her tears. "You seem awfully sure there will be more," she said. Beau grinned, placing a hand on her rounded belly. "I'm planning on a whole houseful, Mrs. Lancaster, if you're willing." As summer turned to fall, Hannah's anxiety grew along with her child. Dr. Jenkins visited regularly, assuring her that everything was progressing normally. The women of the town surrounded her with support, sharing remedies for morning sickness, sewing baby clothes, offering advice and encouragement. "You're not alone this time," Eliza reminded her during one such gathering. "That makes all the difference." November brought early snow to the mountains, and the birth of Hannah's child, a healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue eyes. The labor was long but uncomplicated, and when Dr. Jenkins placed the wailing infant in Hannah's arms, she wept with joy and relief. "He's perfect," Beau whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he sat beside her on the bed. "Absolutely perfect." "William Grace Lancaster," Hannah said, stroking the baby's cheek. "We'll call him Will, but he'll carry Grace with him always." As Will grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered under Beau's careful management. They added a small herd of cattle, then horses, gradually building toward independence from the Callahan spread. Hannah continued teaching until her second pregnancy kept her closer to home. Their daughter, born in the spring of 1882, they named Sarah after Beau's mother. Will, at 2.5, regarded his sister with a mixture of fascination and suspicion that made his parents laugh. Life settled into a rhythm of seasons and growth. The valley that had once held only a single cabin now boasted a thriving small ranch with orchards, gardens, and fields of hay for the livestock. Hannah found time between caring for her children and helping with the ranch to return to an old love: writing. Her stories, published in magazines and newspapers across the country, drew on the rich tapestry of Western life and the resilience of its people. 5 years after they married, as they sat on their porch watching Will and Sarah play in the yard, Beau took Hannah's hand. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Really happy." Hannah leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she had never thought possible. "More than I ever dreamed I could be," she said honestly. "When I came to Owyhee, I thought I'd spend my life running from shame. Instead, I found a place where I could stop running, where I could be accepted for who I am." "You found me too," Beau reminded her with a grin. "Don't forget that part." Hannah laughed, turning to kiss him. "How could I forget? You're the man who saw past my shame and said I choose you when I couldn't even choose myself." "Best choice I ever made," Beau said, pulling her closer. As dusk settled over their valley, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Hannah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The shame that had once defined her now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the love of a good man, the joy of their children, and the acceptance of a community that had become family. The young woman who had stepped off the stage in Owyhee 3 years earlier, heart heavy with secrets and shame, could never have imagined the life awaiting her. A life not without challenges or sorrows, but rich with love, purpose, and belonging. "Mama." Will called from the yard, his face alight with excitement. "Come see what I found." Hannah rose, her hand still clasped in Beau's, and went to join her son. The past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. Here, in this valley with this family, she had found not just a refuge from shame, but a place to belong, to grow, to love. And that, she knew with quiet certainty, was worth everything she had endured to find it.